I'm Russ Feingold. We need to get started fixing all this. People tell me all the time that our politics in Washington are broken and that multimillionaires, billionaires, and big corporations are calling all the shots. They especially say this about the U.S. Senate, and it's hard not to agree. But what are we going to do? Get rid of the Senate? Actually, no one I've listened to says we should throw in the towel and give up. And I don't think that either. Instead, let's fight together for change. That means helping to bring back to the U.S. Senate strong independence, bipartisanship, and honesty. So today, I'm pleased to announce that I'm planning to run for the United States Senate in 2016.
We'll start with Craig Gilbert, our bureau chief in Washington. We were expecting an announcement from Russ Feingold. I don't know that we were expecting it this early necessarily, but you heard his message in that video, broken politics, broken Senate. Give us your take, Craig, on sort of the outlines of what this rematch could look like.
Well, I mean, not a surprise, obviously, but a great race on so many different levels. I mean, it's automatically, I think, will be seen as the #1 or #2 race in the country for a lot of reasons. You have a rematch, which is really rare in Senate elections. You've got two, massive ideological contrast between these candidates. You've got a great foreign policy debate now that Republican Senator Johnson has kind of turned into a foreign policy and national security senator. So it's a great race, and you've got the interplay between a Senate race and a presidential contest in the state, which under one scenario could include having Scott Walker at the top of the Republican ticket. So this is a race that'll be very hard fought. We're going to see, it'll look a lot like some of the races and some of the election cycles we've experienced in Wisconsin in recent years, which is tons of outside money, a lot of national interest, and very competitive.
Do you think that Senator Feingold has a better chance in this one based on the demographics, or is that too early to say, Craig?
Well, he certainly got a better chance than he did in 2010 when he lost, because for a couple of reasons. That was a big Republican wave year, which was awful for Democrats. It was also a midterm election. And the pattern in Wisconsin, and to some degree nationally in recent years, has been that Democrats do better in presidential cycles when the turnout is bigger and more diverse. Feingold has always done better on a presidential ballot than on a midterm ballot. So that makes Ron Johnson kind of vulnerable, because he won re-election under the best possible set of election conditions, and now he has to run in a different set of conditions. The wild card, of course, is the presidential race, which will have an impact on the Senate race. We don't know what that's going to look like, but all things being equal, this sets up as a much better scenario for Feingold than 2010 was.
All right, let's turn to Dan Bice, our Watchdog columnist. Dan, I must tell you, it's a good thing we didn't discontinue your column, as some people have reported today. You're back from your vacation. What's your take on this race? You've followed both candidates
I think it's
closely.
interesting. The Republicans are already downplaying Johnson's position, pointing out that his approval rating in the most recent Marquette poll was below 60%, whereas Feingold's was above 90%. So they're saying coming into this race, he's the underdog, which is an interesting dynamic, and that he's got to spend the next few weeks, next few months shoring up his base. So you have that going on. The other question that a lot of people are asking, and you raised at the beginning, is why now? The Republicans are saying, why did he bring this up now? The Democrats are saying, why not announce now? This is a good time to announce. The cycle started. There's a lot of money that needs to be raised. So those are some of the dynamics that are going on right now.
Well, talk about, Craig, on the approval ratings, 90%, that's even probably above Aaron Rodgers.
Well, that's
right?
name ID, not approval.
Right.
So Feingold does have higher name ID than Ron Johnson does. And his favorability ratings are better. In the last Marquette poll, he had, I think it was 48% favorable and 27 or 28% unfavorable. Ron Johnson was closer to even on that score. And obviously Feingold in the Marquette poll last month was ahead by 16 points, which was kind of a shocking set of numbers. It wasn't surprising that Feingold was ahead, but ahead by that much. Now, he can't sustain that kind of a lead, I don't think, through an election. His numbers will flatten a little bit because in an election you become, identified as a more partisan figure. He's been out of partisan politics for 6 years, and that's probably been helpful to his image. So, it'll be a real race. It'll be a competitive race. If you had to say who was the favorite right now, you would probably say Feingold, but there's so many things that we don't know yet. And I mentioned one of them earlier, which is, how competitive the presidential race is going to be. if this is a good Republican year at the presidential level, then that's a problem for Russ Feingold, because one thing we've seen in Wisconsin is a real decline in ticket splitting. And so the Senate race and the presidential race are probably not going to be very far apart come November of 2016.
Yeah, I was interested in the tone on his statement about, broken Senate, here's a guy who spent many years in the Senate. Dan, is he able to run as an outsider? That's kind of be the ultimate flip here, because that's how Johnson ran.
Right, and he did run as the outsider, but the thing is, Johnson seems to really enjoy being a senator too, and he's on TV a fair bit now and is emerging as a foreign policy expert, as Craig said. It is interesting that the dynamic is, it looks like they're going to try to flip it, but it's going to be hard to do. He was 18 years in the Senate, and for I think 10 of those years, the Democrats had a majority. So the question is going to be, how much did they accomplish during their time in the Senate?
All right, we also have Tom Kertscher here with us today, who's a PolitiFact Wisconsin reporter. And I just wanted to ask you, Tom, can you give us a quick sense of how the two have fared on the truthometer back on that first election?
Sure. Well, there's an imbalance because Russ Feingold was defeated for election a couple of months after PolitiFact Wisconsin launched. So we only fact-checked him 5 times. 1 true, 2 half-true, 1 mostly false, and 1 pants on fire. We gave him a pants on fire rating because he said he had been outspent by his opponents every time he ran for the U.S. Senate. But in his 3rd election, he was counting all the Republican candidates who ran in the primary, not the one who ran against him.
Sort of aggregated them all.
Right.
And then Johnson.
And for Ron Johnson, of course, he's been on the scene much longer since PolitiFact launched. We've fact-checked him 26 times. He's had 2 true, 1 pants on fire, and the rest of his ratings have been in between. His pants on fire was for a statement about fraud. He said that the average rate of fraud in 4 different public assistance programs was 20 to 25%, but we found no evidence that the rate of fraud was nearly that high.